Hello, everybody! Oh, Alexa, turn on the softboxes. Hi, it's Gordon Firemark, and this is the podcast Lawyer Speaks. I don't have my overlays, nothing is working right. I'm going to get that together as we speak, if I can find them while we talk. Anyway, I've got a few things to tell you, and I'm just going to linger for a couple minutes, see if some people show up. Meanwhile, I'll get this overlay thing happening correctly. Scenes, where are you? There we go. That is not the right thing. Well, all right. I don't have my... I got to get my stuff figured. Anyway, hello. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and this is the podcast Lawyer Speaks. Where'd my other overlay go? Here we go. That's not the right one, I think. Well, we'll see. It's going to loop around. Okay. Hi. Never a dull moment. I have been so crazy busy today that I am just a little flustered and frazzled and framist and all that jazz. So I wanted to say hello and share with you one of the big mistakes that I'm seeing podcasters making when they're trying to monetize and get themselves ready for turning their podcasting into business. So if that is you, you're going to want to stay tuned. We're also going to be talking about several other things today. I have questions that have been posed to me from several people. One deals with call-in shows and what do you do if you can't get them to sign a release in advance of the recording. Another one deals, it was actually in the context of a documentary film, but it raises questions about doing interviews with minors, doing shows where you have minor performers. If you do a true crime, a dramatization kind of a podcast, any of that, you're going to pay attention there to that as well. Also having had an interesting conversation with some people about disclaimers. And I just recently, just in the last couple of hours actually, had an exchange with somebody about the wording of my podcast release language and the use of the word producer. So we're going to talk about all of that, and yeah, we're gonna have a good time. So let's see if there we go. I got to get a podcast lawyer logo made that will do that thing, similar to that. In any event, thank you for being here. If you're here watching live, thank you. If you're not, drop hashtag replay in the what do you call it, in the comments below, and I would love to hear your questions as well. So if you have something, just drop them in the comments, whether you're live or on replay. Put them in there, and if I don't get to them live today, I'll get to them on a future episode of the podcast Lawyer Speaks. So one of the biggest mistakes that I am seeing podcasters making is monetizing or trying to monetize their show before they're really ready. Now, I'm not talking about ready in terms of wanting it. I'm not talking about ready in terms of having the big enough audience. And I'm not talking about ready in terms of technology or just having been around long enough or enough of a following or awareness or any of that. No, I'm talking about not ready because they haven't been treating their podcast like the business it needs to be if they're going to monetize. So hi, I am Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and for years now, I have been helping creatives, podcasters like you, to get legit and go pro, to get your legal and business affairs in order so you're positioned for growth and profit. That's my thing. Today I'm going to share these 3 ideas about why you might not actually be ready for profitable professional podcasting. So I'm going to ask you a question, just to sort of address the idea that you don't have to be a business to take sponsors and make money from podcasting. Well, I guess there's always an exception to the rule, or there's the one who proves the point that no rules are universal. But let me ask you this. How many really successful folks do you know that don't treat their whatever it is they're doing like a business? How many amateurs, hobbyists, dabblers in whatever do you give your money to? Right? That's right. Hobbyists, dabblers, amateurs, they have fans and they make content. Professionals have businesses, customers, and they make products and services and, yeah, money. So if you want to make money at something, if you want it to be your business, if you want it to be professional, you got to be legit. You got to get legit about it. You got to be a business. You got to be business-like. And you have to act professionally. And that means getting your business and legal affairs in order. Otherwise, what you have is a hobby. You're a hobbyist. You're dabbling. And look, that's okay if that's what you want. I mean, after all, most of us got into podcasting to have fun and share our thoughts and educate and entertain people, right? Or maybe just to hear the sounds of our own voice. But if you want to make it your profession, you got to change your mindset about what you're doing. You've got to start thinking about it as a business. That's the first reason. People are not monetizing their podcasts successfully because they're not thinking about it as a business. Plain and simple. I've got some notes here I'm just looking at. Another reason you might not be ready for monetizing, for being a professional podcaster, is you don't have a concrete plan, a business plan. You know the saying, fail to plan, plan to fail. And it really is true. Now, we have all had plans, and we know that as soon as you make plans and things change, they go out the window right away, right? Isn't that the saying in the war colleges and the military is, no battle plan survives the first shot being fired, right? But it's not the plan itself that's important. It's not the plan itself, but the actual planning process that's important, because it gets you thinking. It gets you considering what can happen. It gets you considering all of the various options of things that might happen. Hopefully you've got a plan A, plan B, plan C if you're doing things right? So if you haven't done that, if you haven't done some planning, if you haven't figured out a business plan, put it down on paper, I say you're not really ready to make a go of it professionally. I'm not here to be harsh. I'm not here to burst your bubble. I'm not here to... Look, I want to help you. That's what I do, right? I want to help people make the most out of their podcasting. So if it sounds harsh, I'm sorry. I'm just really trying to be direct and honest about what you need to do if you want to make it as a professional podcaster. And then there's the third reason that you're probably not ready, and this is the one that you see it coming, right? You haven't got your legal structures in order, your business and legal affairs in order. Even if you have that business plan, even if you think of things as a business, even if you call yourself a business, if you haven't done the things that real businesses do to set up and protect yourself, to structure your operations and personnel and document your deals the way businesses do, then I say you're still dabbling. You're still in hobbyist mode. And look, if that's where you want to stay, that is totally fine. I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but if you want to make your business podcasting, if you want to be known as a professional podcaster, if you want to sell ads, you want to make your money, your living, so you can dump that day job and get back to the fun of podcasting. Because let's face it, if you're not making money from it and you're just, hustling to get audience and hustling to get out, eventually it stops being fun, right? It stops because it's something you're worried about. Am I losing money? Am I spending too much? Am I spending too much of my time, right? You got the day job to go to, all that stuff. So if you're not turning it into a business and you want to, then I'm saying you've got to do the things that businesses do. Professionals know that they are in a business and they invest in the things that businesses need to grow and profit. If you're a dentist, you invest in the tools that dentists need to do their dentistry. You run ads, you put ads in the yellow pages, you rent an office, right? You install the equipment, you make a deal for the x-ray, you do all that stuff. If you're in the business of podcasting, you get yourself set up as a business. Yeah, dentists form their corporation, a professional corporation or their LLC. Likewise for podcasters. These are the things you're going to do. Invest in the things that businesses do when they're ready, willing, and able to grow and profit. Because let's face it, customers, clients, advertisers, sponsors don't want to do business with you if you are just a hobbyist. They see you as an amateur. You may be brilliant at what you do. In fact, you probably are great at what you do. But if you don't come across as a professional, if you're not presenting a business-like front, they are going to have some reluctance to do business with you. And you're exposed to risk and liability and the ways the winds blow and all those kinds of things. So you got to do this stuff. Now, look, I've just covered this stuff really quickly, but I've created a new Facebook group, and a training series is coming where I'm going to help you with all these kinds of things. Free Facebook group, free training. Excuse me. We're going to be talking about the mindset stuff. We're going to be talking about the planning. I'm going to share some resources on creating that business plan, and we'll talk about some of the philosophies of how advertising business runs and those kinds of things. And a lot of the stuff you may already know or have an inkling of, but I'm going to try to get it down into some concrete ideas for you to work from as you start to move from where you are now to profitable professional podcaster. So, free Facebook group. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Let me do this right now. It is. I got to remember what it is. It's legitpodcastpro.com. So what you're going to do is you sign up for this training. Ooh, that's pretty small, actually. Let me make it bigger. Legitpodcastpro.com gets you into the free training, and then you can go to the Facebook group and register, join the Facebook group where we'll be doing this, and you will be signed up for the training and get get access to the membership of the Facebook group as well for all of this. So go on over to legitpodcastpro.com, sign in with your name and your email address, and register, and then come on over to the Facebook group and join. And I'm looking forward to having these kinds of conversations with you in there. We'll be talking about the mindset stuff and the planning stuff and all the legal stuff, of course. Yes, I will lay it all out for you. I'm going to explain my 4-step framework. Go through each of the 4 steps in the course of these trainings, the key steps that you have to take if you're going to get legit and go pro. If you're serious about being a podcast professional, this is what I want you to do. Come on over to legitpodcastpro.com, register for the training, and I'll see you in there. Then follow the link to the Facebook group. There's a big blue button after you register for the training. I want to help you make the most out of your podcasting. You can do it. So join this Facebook group, right? I've been doing this a long time. Most of you know me as the podcast lawyer, and I want to help you avoid the need to hire me as your lawyer. I want to help you get things right yourself so you don't end up needing me to come in and fix things for you. All right, so that's that. I'm going to just leave the Legit Podcast Pro bug up on the screen for a bit, and I'll remind you about it again when I come back, because I don't have my scenes all set up today. I should have gotten in there a little earlier and done that. Anyway, let's get to some question and answer stuff right now. Let me see, is anybody in the room watching? Nobody's here right now. It's kind of interesting. Usually I have a few people here. So, all right. So somebody wrote in, I have a podcast with live callers and chat participants. How are those people protected? For example, if the recorded podcast is then uploaded to Stitcher or YouTube or whatever, the live callers' comments are on that recording. How are they protected, since it was impossible to have them sign a release since we didn't know they were going to call or who they even are? Well, first of all, let me say, it's not about how they're protected. We're not protecting those people. We're getting permission, consent from those people. It's about protecting you when or if they ever claim that they didn't give you permission to be recorded and have it published on those various platforms or so. So with phone-in shows, unfortunately, you can't have them sign something in advance. So about the best you can do is ideally have a pre-screener on the calls. Take the call and talk on an extension before you go onto the recording, and have that pre-screener explain what the call will be recorded and published, and that it'll be made live, and then there's going to be a replay, and that by participating they're consenting, there's not going to get paid, and then when they come on, you just say you're on live with us or similar. It's not perfect, and you still might not be totally protected. This is what the radio stations do when you call into a radio station. This is what happens when you do live call-in pretty much anywhere. So this is the best practice, I guess. It's not perfect. You still might be unprotected a little bit if you later decide you want to turn that material into some kind of a information product or republish it in some other form. But this is about the best you're going to be able to do. Now, you might also want to include a little disclaimer or release in the show content itself before you start taking the calls at all. We're going to go to calls now. This is a live call-in show, so when you call in and we put you on the air, you are consenting to be recorded and published and repurposed in any way we choose in perpetuity without any right of approval or payment. And if you can't agree to that, don't call in. We'll miss you, but don't do it. Thanks. Okay, here's our first caller. You're on live. That's how you would do that. And it's that simple. If you want to get a copy of that text of what I just said, let me know. Just shoot me a message in the DMs and I'll post it as a little blurb. All right. So that was the first question. Let me see. Anybody here? Okay. No questions in the comments right now. A couple weeks ago, I had this one. This is the film one, but it's going to apply to podcasts as well. I recently did several shoots at a nonprofit organization. Many minors appeared in the footage, or in this case, the show. I would like to use some of this in my documentary, and the organization in question is pleased to have that footage used. I want to be sure I'm protected once the film is released and out on the internet, where I'll have little control over it. I'm wondering if I can ask the organization's executive director to provide me with both the release from the organization that they have on file that indicates they're not responsible for anything that happens to a child while in their care, and ask him for either a letter that he'll give to me or send out to the parents or something like that, and so on. I'm saying once the documentary is released, I'm not responsible, et cetera, et cetera. As well, I'd like a release stating my company is the owner of the footage, that it's copyrighted, etc. All right, so this is a bunch of different questions. So a couple things going on here. Look, the organization, when you're working with minors, you have lots and lots of additional issues to consider. My advice would be, if you can't get the permission from a parent of a minor, you shouldn't record them. Film, video, audio, doesn't matter. You shouldn't record a minor unless you have permission from their parent. Now, whether or not that's really binding is an open question. If you were making a big feature film, I would say we're not going to get a parent signature. We're going to go to court and get a judge to approve the client's contract, because minors have the right to disaffirm any contract that's made before they're 18. There is no such thing. I shouldn't say there's no such thing. Minors can't make binding contracts. So you can't make a binding agreement, even a release with a minor. And at least here in California and in many other places, children are no longer considered property of their parents. So parents can't give consent for the kid to do the work or whatever. And they really can't force the kid to do the work. So you might have a contract with a parent that says, yes, my kid can appear on your show and you're free to use their voice and whatever else. But if they can't force the kid to abide by those terms, well, you're going to be out of luck if the kid changes his mind. So, look, it doesn't happen that often. And with a podcast, it depends on the show, of course. But if you're using kids just as interview guests, I would say be really careful. Get the parents on board, get the parents to sign off. Make sure the kids understand this is being recorded. We're going to use it. It's going to be out there forever. Are you okay with that? Okay, great. And then the parents also saying, yes, you can record my child in their recording. Now, if you're doing something that's a scripted show or a narrative, true crime kind of a thing, then I would say maybe, especially if you're paying the talent to do the work, you're creating an entertainment product. And just like I would do for the film, I would consider spending the money to go to court. If you're here in California, there's this procedure to get a court approval of the contract that basically takes away the kid's right to disaffirm the deal. So that's a little more complicated heads-up entertainment law stuff that you want to think about if you're using minors as actors in a show or something or whatever like that. If the minors are the hosts of the show, it raises other questions. Again, you can't have a contract that's binding unless you get the court. And courts don't probably want to get involved in these little. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on with that, setting up money in trust for the kid for later and things like that. So it's complicated. But if you're paying actors to be in your show, then you're going to want to get into this thing, if any of them are minors. What else? Can the executive director transfer the release? No, I don't really think so. The executive director can give you permission to come to the premises and film. But unless the parents have given the executive director the permission to have their children filmed and to be used in these kinds of things, it's probably not enough. And even if they have given that permission, I'm going to say go to the parents directly and get something signed. What else? Transfer ownership of the footage. That's probably not really necessary if you're the audio recorder. If you're the recorder. If you're not an employee of the company that you're, of the nonprofit or whatever, the recordings are going to belong to you. That's a fundamental principle of copyright law. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you are an employee, then yeah, you need to get an assignment of that stuff over, and yeah, some kind of a release agreement with the owner of the venue. I would call that a location release, essentially, and there you go. As far as how you get the finished work copyrighted, you don't have to do anything. You own a copyright. You can and probably ought to register the final film with the Copyright Office over at copyright.gov. I should probably do a tutorial on how to register a copyright. Actually, that's something I may be able to cover in the group that I was talking about. What a beautiful opportunity to segue and just come back to telling you about my new free Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group, so it's only for folks who really want to get legit as a podcasting professional. I'm going to share with you all of the who, what, where, when, how, and why of doing those things. Come on over to legitpodcastpro.com and sign up for the free training and sign up to join the Facebook group. Same name, Legit Podcast Pro, and get in there and we'll share some information about that kind of stuff. How to do it stuff is definitely something I want to share with you. Now, next question comes from David, who asks, "Hey, you don't mention podcast disclaimers much." He has a podcast and an interview where he talks to business owners about their products and services and sometimes purchasing people. And so some of the comments could be inferred as advice, could be presented as fact when in fact it's sort of opinion or puffery, advertising kind of talk, marketing kind of talk. So he's asking, should I include a disclaimer on the podcast? And where should it go? Should it be in the show notes? Should it be in the episode? And so on and so forth. So first off, let me say, and there's been some discussion about this in one of the podcasting groups where this post first popped up. Disclaimers have some legal effect, right? Basically, what you're dealing with is assumption of the risk. You're telling people, hey, what you're about to hear either is or isn't advice that you should just trust blindly. What you're about to hear is the opinion of the speaker and the guest, and not of the host or owners of the podcast. That's a good one to do. And there's lots of different language you can use. There's lots of it out there. David had proposed some I saw earlier, but I don't want to steal his words exactly, but it was pretty good. So, look, the opinions expressed on this show are those of the guests. And the show does not take any responsibility. If you maybe the don't try this at home kind of a disclaimer. If someone's talking about, hey, if you drink bleach, it will keep you from getting sick. You probably want to follow that right up and say, don't try this at home. Check with a doctor first, something like that. Now, so that brings us to the question not only of what should the disclaimer say, and it's going to be different for everything. If you're doing a show about financial stuff, then you're going to want to say, this isn't financial advice you should trust without getting your own independent consultation with an advisor. If it's a legal show, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. I'm going to do this one right now. I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer unless you've hired me specifically to look into your situation and give you custom-tailored legal advice. So don't rely on what's said here. I won't take any responsibility for what happens if you do. Again, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. So take everything I say with a grain of salt until and unless you and I have established a formal attorney-client relationship. There you go. So you can do that kind of thing. Now, a doctor, if you're giving medical advice or just lifestyle advice, you may want to say something. But, and this is a big but, and this was something that James Cridlin from Pod News brought up in a discussion, is that, you can undermine your credibility as a podcaster. You can undermine the value of the show by burdening it with too many disclaimers and qualifying statements and things like that. It's okay to be a little bold and just say, this is how it is. This is how we see it. This is how he sees it. Without getting into a bunch of legalese sounding language. It doesn't help. It just irritates the listeners. You're taking up 10, 15 seconds of their time that you don't need to take up. People listening know they're not going to the internet to find, they may be going to the internet to find legal ideas and stuff like that, but they aren't looking to me and expecting me that I'm giving them legal advice that they should rely on, and that if something goes wrong, they can come and sue me. Look, if I wrote a book and they picked it up at the library, would they be able to sue me because something in the book was wrong? No, of course not. We all have a right of free speech. We have the right to talk and share our views and ideas, and we need to be critical on both the listening and the transmitting side of these things. But if you're going to do a disclaimer, let's talk about where you should do it. The placement of that disclaimer is really, really important. I've said this in the context of the disclosures you need to make when you're doing, affiliate statements or endorsements and things like that. It needs to be adjacent to the message in question. So don't just bury your disclaimer in your show notes. If you're going to be doing a disclaimer, include it in both the show notes and the recording, the audio. And if you're doing video, it doesn't hurt to put it up on screen as well, right? So you say it and do it right before the people start talking, and right after they finish talking. Before you go out to the bumper or the closing music or whatever else. Hey, what you've just heard are the opinions of the people who express them, and we don't take any responsibility for them ourselves. We're all about sharing, controversial ideas, and we hope you've enjoyed the show. Thanks. We'll see you next week. Whatever. That's how you do it. Now, if somebody does say something very controversial, very risky, very, challenging in the middle of the show, I think it is appropriate to say, hey, don't drink bleach at home until you've checked with your doctor. I'm not sure that's good advice. Let's remind our listeners at home, this is just one person's opinion. You can do that kind of thing, just in a conversational style in the discussion, without being too confrontational with your guest. Obviously, you don't want to alienate a guest, but you have to protect yourself as well. So the placement of the disclaimer is a pretty important thing to think about. One more question, and then I'm going to call it a day. I have to open up a document. Let me see if I can find this document really quickly. Oh, I bet it's here. Let me see. No, it's not. Darn it. Podcast release. So I offer a podcast release for guests, right? You go to podcastrelease.com. You'll find that podcast release, and I'm just looking for the actual document. Oops. Let's see. Oh, it's not showing up. Well, her question has to do with some of the language in it, and so I actually want to show you what I'm talking about. All right, podcast release, lead magnet, Where to go? No, that's not it. I want to make sure I got the right one. And it was interesting because the one that she was talking about, I think, is a little older, and I'm wondering where it came from, because and maybe I'll email her about that. But yeah, so in the one she was looking at, apparently the word producer appears, and I'm just going to double check this here. Yeah, so in this version of it, which is not the most recent version, so I've got to reach back to her. But let me get it up on the screen here. And let me share it now. Let me find out how to figure out there. Okay, good television, right? Okay, there's that. Okay, so there is my podcast release form, right? And you can see that it is between the guest. we list the title, the name of the show, the guest, the address, and so on. And you can say here, guest does hereby release that, and then we put the name of the producer, and we call that person producer. You see that it's a capitalized term and it's in quotations. That person or company is the sole owner of all rights in the programming and the recording and so on. So what Lorinda's question to me was, I'll read it to you. She said, in the podcast release, you've mentioned producer in the second paragraph. I'm somewhat confused. Yes, there are producers, I get it, but they work for the podcasters. It leads me to ask, why do we need to use producer in the release form? So in this particular version of the document, that's exactly right. We're using the name producer to identify the owner of the show, not the person who has the title producer. Think of that as a lowercase producer. The uppercase producer is the person we've now listed on this line in the document. And we're saying that's who owns the show. That's it. So you can put anybody's name or any company's name or names, plural, in there, and you'd be fine to do that. Now here's another version of the same, of a sort of similar agreement. Let me just make sure we're looking at the same one. Yeah, we are. Okay, so here we say guest does hereby consent to the recording, and we refer to the program, and then we say guest does acknowledge that podcaster is the sole owner. So we've changed it to podcaster. Could just as easily say owner, and everywhere the capitalized podcaster appears, we change it to owner. Could use a person's name, whatever it is. So this is just a convention in the way we make contracts, is to define a term, in this case the term podcaster or the term producer, by referencing it this way, listing the name and then calling them podcaster. Sometimes it will say herein referred to as podcaster or something like that. And that's really the convention that I was using there. So that's what's going on there. But think about it like this. If you buy Tillamook cheese, Tillamook is the producer of that cheese, even though Steve may have been the one who actually, cut the block and put it in the wrapper and ran it through the machine and whatever else, right? So Steve is he's not the producer by title, but the point is the company is the producer of the product. Likewise, if Paramount Pictures goes out and makes Beverly Hills Cop 7 or Jaws 27 or whatever, it is the producer. Actually, Universal made Jaws, but my point, Paramount Pictures is the producer of the film, even though there are people who work at Paramount Pictures who have the title in the credits of producer. Nevertheless, we still refer to Paramount as the producer of the film. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So when you're reading contracts, that's just something to sort of be mindful about. And in this case, look, if you want to change it to owner or change it to podcaster, that's fine. I would really encourage everybody to make sure you have the most current version of the thing. And listen, if you're watching live right now, I'd love to hear if you have a comment or a question, or just say hello so I know you're here. And let's have a little chit chat. Got a few more minutes before I got to run. I got to go make dinner for the family. My wife has things going on, and so I'm the one who cooks on Thursday evenings around here. No comments or questions. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so. Okay, one more plug for legalpodcastpro.com, legitpodcastpro.com. Gosh, legitpodcastpro.com. Let me make that bigger. Legitpodcastpro.com is the place to go if you are serious about taking your podcast into the professional realm. You're going to get legit, you're going to get serious, you're going to make it a business, you're going to make money with your podcasting. Monetizing means you're in business, right? You got to be business-like about it, and that means thinking about it like a business, planning like a business plans, and getting your business and legal affairs in order like a business does. So come on over to legitpodcastpro.com, and we'll get you into the free training and the free group where I'll be doing the training in the week after next. And I would love to have you there. So please join me and get into the group, and we'll talk through all of the things that you need to do. And this is DIY stuff. Do it yourself. So you don't have to hire me either now to do it for you or later to fix it later when there are problems. I'm going to show you exactly how to turn your podcasting enterprise, your hobby, into a business so you can make money doing this art form, this creative form that we love so much. Come on over to legitpodcastpro.com and join the fun. And until next time, I will say thanks for watching. I'm Gordon Firemark, and I'm the podcast lawyer. I'll see you again next Thursday at 4 p.m. I'm probably going to be back sooner than that, so keep an eye out. If you're not already following or liking the Podcast Lawyer page, do that now too. It's facebook.com/podcastlaw. Follow me there, and that way you'll know when I go live. Thanks again for watching. Talk to you soon. Happy Thursday.